Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Subaru Forester, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Class 3 trailer hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure that it's going to be the right hitch for you. When it comes to the Subaru Forester, and really all Subarus in general, people use these vehicles to do a lot of different things, whether they're pulling their trailer around, whether it be, a kayak trailer, a small boat, a camper, whatever the case may be. Or you get a lot of people out using hitch-mounted accessories as well. Like our guy here today is planning on using a bike rack. So because of that, if it were me and I was looking for a hitch for a Subaru, I would want something that's going to be able to handle just about anything you want to throw at it. And that's exactly what this hitch is going to allow us to do. Whether you're planning on towing or using the accessories, it's going to get the job done. And honestly, I feel like with the Forester as well, the appearance is going to matter too. And I think this one looks really good. For the most part, it's going to be hidden unless you're standing back behind the vehicle a little bit. Then you're going to be able to see the hitch kind of hanging down below. But to me, it's not really a big deal because these Subarus, they accept accessories very well, and having something like a hitch on the back of it honestly just looks right at home. Since this is a Class 3 hitch, it is going to have that 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, and at the end it's going to have a reinforced collar for a little bit of extra support. It is going to use that standard 5/8 pin and clip. Keep in mind though, a pin and clip does not come included. If you need one, not a big deal, you can grab it here at eTrailer. And I do like the safety chain openings. They set back a little bit, and so you're not going to have any interference with your pin and clip. And the openings are really large, so you're going to be able to use just about any size hook that you might have. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's going to have some pretty high numbers. The maximum gross tongue weight rating is going to be 525 pounds. It's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So you'll be able to use just about any size bike rack or cargo carrier, just to kind of give you an example. As far as the hitch's maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 3,500 pounds. And that's going to be the amount of weight that is pulling on the hitch. So the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. Now, I do always like to recommend, though, it's never a bad idea just to grab your Subaru's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Forester can pull that much weight safely. With all that in mind, if you are going to be pulling a trailer around, you're going to want the lights to work on it. That way you're safe and legal and people around you know what's going on. And to accomplish that, you can always check out some trailer wiring. Now we can go ahead, just grab a couple of measurements, and these are going to help us figure out what hitch-mounted accessories will work best. We go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening. That's going to be about 14 inches. So if you're pulling a trailer around, chances are pretty good you can use a ball mount that has a straight shank, or maybe even one that has a very slight rise in it. Go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper. That's going to be about 4 inches, which is pretty good clearance actually. But you're able to use that measurement to figure out exactly if any of those folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without contacting the back of your Subaru's bumper. Other than that though, at the end of the day, hitch you really can't go wrong with. Not only is it going to look good, but also going to get the job done. Now, as far as the installation goes, really not too bad. Not a whole lot involved, so as long as you take your time and stay focused, you really shouldn't run into too many issues. But speaking of the installation, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage, and put the hitch on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Subaru, and first things first, we need to just let the exhaust come down a little bit. That way we'll have some extra room to work. To make that easier, I do suggest taking a strap and just running it from side to side. That way we can kind of control how fast and how far we let the exhaust come down. So we're going to have 3 rubber isolator hangers, one here, one just like it on the other side of the muffler, and then one towards the center of the car. We're going to pry these off. You can use a big screwdriver or pry bar if you got one, but Also helps to lubricate them. You can spray soapy water, penetrating oil, something like that on them, and simply just pry it off. And now we can do that to the 2 remaining isolator hangers. The other one will be, this one's a little trickier to get to. It's kind of buried up there in the corner, but same idea. Just pry one end of it off. If you just follow the exhaust pipe towards the front. And one more right here. We'll work that off. Then we're able to loosen up our strap and let the exhaust come down a little bit. At this point, we can remove the heat shield here. So this is going to be held in place with 4 10mm fasteners. So just one in each corner. Take our socket, get all these removed. Let this last one out. We'll just temporarily lower this and set it to the side. What we can do now, over on the driver's side here, we can remove this underbody panel. So there's 2 10mm screws. Pull those out. And then we're gonna have some push pin type fasteners. Looks like we'll have 3 along this edge, and then we might have some more back here too. We'll get these out first and see. So with these, you just take a flathead screwdriver, or even a trim tool if you got one, pry underneath the head of it, and work the fastener out. And yeah, it feels like it's still attached, so back on this side, we might have another fastener or 2 we need to pull out. So it looks like we're gonna have 2 more fasteners. Same deal with these. Although they look a little different, they work the same. Just pry underneath the head, pull it out. And now with it like that, we should be able to kind of grab this and work it out from underneath the vehicle. Underneath, on the bottom side of our frame rail, we're gonna have 4 rubber plugs that we need to pull out. So you can just take a screwdriver and pop them on out. And I wanna mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we're also gonna do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. And what we need to do is enlarge a hole to get our hardware in place. So I like to use this one because it's already bigger and more out of the way. The only issue is it's just a little bit too small to get our hardware in, our bolt and our spacer block. So what I'm gonna do is just take a die grinder bit and enlarge this a little bit. If you don't have a power tool that can do this, a hand file will work as well. You don't have to remove that much material, so you know, it is reasonable, but obviously doing it by hand will take you a little bit longer. With that said, I'm gonna enlarge this a little bit until we have it just big enough to be able to get our hardware in place. So being able to get the spacer block in there, as well as the carriage bolt head, looks like we're in pretty good shape. So now we can actually get all the hardware actually in there. And so what we're gonna do, we're gonna have 3 attachment points, which will be these 3 holes. You're gonna take your fish wire and take the coiled end and kind of line it up with this, and then put a bend in it where it's going to be close. Makes it easier to come out. And what you're going to do is take the coiled end, put it through that hole there, feed it towards the front of our car, and get that coiled end out. Sometimes it pops right out, other times you might have to reach up there And give it a little help. Spacer block goes over it. Carriage bolt threads onto it. And then feed the hardware up. Until it drops out. And essentially I'm going to use that same exact process and same exact hardware for our other remaining 2 attachment points. Once you have all the hardware in place, it's not a bad idea to take some spray paint and just kind of shoot some over the hole that we enlarged. That way we'll have a layer of protection on that bare metal and we don't have to worry about rust or corrosion issues in the future. What we can do now is move to our heat shield and trim this out. So there's 2 dimples on this R and M, and we can use those as a guide. And I'm just going to use a hole saw to cut that material out. That way our bolt can pass through there. If you don't have a hole saw, I mean, I suppose you could always just take a pair of tin snips and cut this little area out as well. Really not a huge deal on what way you do it, as long as this can bolt back up and your hardware can go through there. With the holes drilled, we can reinstall this. So once you feed the fish wires through the holes there that we created, line this up, and we're going to install all the hardware, the factory hardware, with the exception of that one there. And that's because if you put that in, it'll interfere with our hitch. So I like to get all these started and zip them down. Now at the next set of hands, we can grab our hitch and get it up into position. So you want to make sure to drop the pull wires through the appropriate holes in the hitch, and then you can lift it up. And get our bolts passed through. Then you want to remove the pull wire. You can take a flange nut, and we want to get at least one of them started hand tight on each side. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on the rest of the hardware. The rest of the hardware is going to receive the flange nuts, and kind of a trick with these, sometimes when you try to get it started, it wants to push up into the frame. Thankfully these are pretty long bolts, so you can kind of just apply some side pressure there with your finger, and that'll keep it steady and make it a lot easier to get these started. But once they're all in place and hand tight, we can snug them down. And so you can use a 19mm or even a 3/4 inch socket to do that. Now what we need to do is come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can always go in here at eTrailer, or a lot of times go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one there available that you can rent. What we're able to do now is get our exhaust back into position. So with this, just re-lubricate the hangers, and then you can usually just line these up by hand. Push them back on. A little bit tighter up there with the hitch in place, but definitely doable still. And I'll get this last one. And once the exhaust is supporting itself again, you can go ahead and remove our strap. So I went ahead and reinstalled our underbody panel the opposite way that we removed it, really with just one exception. The screw right here, obviously I didn't put that back in because the hitch is now covering the hole, but not really a big deal. With all the other fasteners, this thing is super solid and not going to go anywhere. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on our 2022 Subaru Forester.